Welcome. So happy to see you all. Thank you for joining us today. We're so happy to see you. From its beginning, CMC has welcomed everyone. I'm Carrie Schmidt, Managing Partner with Plentiful, and I serve on the board of CMC Trustees. Thank you to today's forum partner, WBNS-TV. Today's live stream is presented by the Emergency Response Fund of the Columbus Foundation in partnership with the Columbus Dispatch. And let's thank all of those supporting today's forum. All right, now turning to the topic at hand today. Heritage tourism is again bringing travel dollars to Ohio. The National Trust for Historic Preservation defines heritage tourism as traveling to experience the places, artifacts, and activities that authentically represent the stories and people of the past and the present. Places like these abound in Ohio, with more than 58 historic sites and museums supported by Ohio History Connection. There's more than just preserving the past at stake. A study of the Travel Industry Association shows that heritage travelers stay longer at their destinations and spend more money than other types of travelers. We're excited to explore the impact and the future of heritage tourism in Ohio with today's speakers. Please welcome Napoleon Bell, co-founder of the Heritage Tours, Megan Wood, the new executive director and CEO of the Ohio History Connection, and our host, Tracy Townsend, news anchor of WBNS-TV's Wake Up CBUS and 10 TV News at Noon. You can learn more about today's speakers in the forum flyer. And Tracy, we look forward to today's conversation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are as excited about our speakers as I am. I do want to thank CMC for the invitation and tell you that it's nice to have lunch with people, and there aren't TVs around and scanners going off in the newsroom, and there are nice napkins, so that was really great. Thank you so much. You know, I really am excited to be here. I don't know, just by show of hands, how many of you like history? Oh, good, my people, my people. I did want to share with you something that's not in the brochure. I am a native Ohioan. I'm from outside of Cincinnati, from a place called Mount Healthy. I don't know if there are any, oh, hello, people, my Mount Healthy people. But the history of Mount Healthy is that back in 1817, it was founded north of the river. And for Cincinnatians, you all know that's the Ohio River. But there was a cholera epidemic. And so the folks there then migrated north, which is Hamilton Avenue, and they settled in Mount Pleasant. But Mount Pleasant got passed over by the cholera epidemic, and so it became Mount Healthy. Isn't that cool? So I knew that because every day when my dad drove me to school, there was the historical marker that outlined that, and I really was very interested in that. But I share that with you because I love history, and so the thought of heritage tourism really appealed to me. I'm the oldest of 4 kids, and so I just thought Daddy was just taking us on trips because it was cheap. But we learned a lot. So that's the setup for our guests today, because we're going to talk about this and talk about their journey and their passion and what inspires them. And so I'm going to start with Napoleon Bell, who is with us as a founder of the Heritage Tours. And I'd like to have you start by talking about what inspired the Heritage Tours and your passion for history.
Oh, wow. So I guess it starts, the passion for history. Let me first start with that. I think it was from my father. He was Napoleon Bell Sr. And he was big into civil rights. He was also big into making sure that you understood the past and the history so that you don't repeat some of those things into the future. And so the things that he was involved in, especially in the civil rights piece that in regards to housing or lack thereof, and the ability to get a mortgage if you're an African American, and all the things that played into that, says, son, you really need to learn about your history. Although I wasn't a big history buff in school, but he really did, when talking to him and talking to my grandparents, really brought that to fruition about understanding your past and where you're going. So that was kind of started to build the energy in myself to start looking at history. And then also I looked toward, my sister also, she's big into genealogy. And so that even brought it to more fruition. And then we looked at the tours started with the city when I was with the city as a director there with the Community Relations Commission. And then in 2016, when I left, we continued to get calls about, we really enjoyed this. This is really something you should continue doing. So my wife and I started talking about it, and she was getting calls, and so we said, okay, we need to keep this going because we cannot let something like this lay down and just go and fade away because of the impact that it had made on so many lives that we continue to get calls from, especially so many of the young people. And I'll tell you more about that in just a few, but it made that positive impact on their lives, and they still talk about it today. And so we says we need to continue doing this. And so in 2016, that's when the Heritage Tours was created, and to continue that pathway of educating young people and more mature people alike on this tour. So that's my passion. So once you've been on it, you just can't stop, because once you see the light bulb come on, it's like this is what I'm here for. So that's my passion.
All right, we're going to also hear from Megan Wood, who I hope you don't mind if I say you're a history maker as well. So.
Yeah, I came to love history as, really, I had the experience that a lot of people in our field have, is that they had an excellent teacher. And I had some really excellent teachers who wove together the humanities. I had the opportunity to learn in the 10th grade, our English and our history class woven together, and there was music, and there was art, and there was life, and so for me that really became history, is this interdisciplinary crossover of all of life, not just names and dates. And so that really got me excited about history, and in college I discovered a program called Public History. And so I wanted to share a love of history. I saw how I understood myself better, and then had more empathy for other people, and seeing that each person has a path, both as themselves, but also where they came from. And I wasn't sure that I wanted to teach in the classroom, and I found public history, which focuses on local history, on archives, on historic preservation and museums, and then decided to go into museum studies. I went and got a master's in museum studies. My parents are happy that I'm employed after I, broke that news to them that I was gonna go get a graduate degree. But just feel so fortunate that I've been able to take this passion and make it a career, and just look at how our places impact those who come and visit them, and also the communities in which they sit.
So let's talk about, we've heard the definition of heritage tourism, traveling to experience the places, the artifacts, and activities that authentically represent the stories and people of the past and present. Can we talk a little bit about some destinations or places here in our state that represent Ohio, that people should go see, experience?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many places. I can talk a little bit to start with Central Ohio, and then I also think about the way that other places tie to Ohio, like the heritage tours. But in Central Ohio, we have, of course, great museums and cultural institutions. I, of course, have to shout out our Ohio History Center and Ohio Village. But also something we're really excited about is, with the Native American history, is our upcoming designation on the World Heritage List. So this might not be something everyone's familiar with, but there is a serial nomination, which means multiple sites, that UNESCO World Heritage, which is the worldwide designation of significance for the Newark Earthworks, Fort Ancient, and Hopewell Culture Park in Chillicothe. So that nomination will be voted on next summer, and those sites are we say Hopewell, but 2,000 years ago, architecture built by American Indians who were here in this place we now call Ohio. And that, there are those sites, but we just live amongst the remnants of this culture, and we don't think about it the same way. I was in Rome this summer, and I was like, we have this, but it's these American Indian sites. And so this designation is going to give us the opportunity to welcome the world to Ohio, and that, it'll go beyond folks visiting those destinations. They'll probably fly into Columbus Airport and be staying the night and be looking at more beyond that history. So we can be really proud of that and steward that and also be welcoming others into our backyard.
Do you want to build on that?
Well, I'd like to add, part of our tour, starts in Columbus, right, at the Ohio History Connection. So it starts in Columbus. And then we leave there, and we used to go down to the Freedom Center. So we first started out going to the Freedom Center was our first stop. And so what an amazing place. Has anybody here ever been to the Freedom Center? Okay, all right. Well, whoever didn't raise your hand, you got to get there, right? So the Freedom Center, and but then because we did that for several years and said, well, let's change up our first stop. And so we went over to Ripley, Ohio, to the John Parker House and the John Rankin House. And what an amazing piece there is that you're able to truly see where those who were running from the south to the north, coming across the Ohio River, coming up the long steps and all of that, to really be a part of that, right? And they have a great docents that are there to really bring you into really feeling as though that you're going back in time because of the places that you see there. So if I could wrap in the whole tour. Okay, so so our tour starts in Columbus. We go down to Ripley, Ohio, to the John Parker and Rankin House. From there, we go to Atlanta, to the King Center there, to the Martin Luther King Center, and to where Martin Luther King was born in the house up the road. And also visit the National Park, which is all right there in that complex where they are entombed. From there, we go to Tuskegee, to where the Tuskegee Airmen practiced out of, and where so we go to Moton Field and check that out, and they have a museum there. And from there, we go to the college, Tuskegee University, to visit the George Washington Carver Museum and also the Booker T. Washington's home. And then I keep forgetting, we go from there to Selma, where the Edmund Pettus Bridge is, and the Civil Rights and Civil War Museum, the Brown's Chapel, where all that is. And we actually physically walk across that bridge. And during our tour, we also play videos to kind of get you prepared for where you are going to, which makes a total difference. We put you in the mindset of that. From there, we go to Birmingham, Alabama, where the 16th Street Baptist Church is in the Kelly Ingram Park, and also the Civil Rights Museum there. From Birmingham, we go to Montgomery, to the Equal Justice Initiative, where they have the memorial and the museum there. Has anybody ever been to that? EJI. Okay, tell everybody about that. That was a very powerful place to go. If you can just go to one place, do that. Also the Rosa Parks Museum and the Southern Poverty Law Center Museum. Then from Birmingham, then to Montgomery, then to Memphis, Tennessee, to the Lorraine Motel. And we visit that, and that's a half-day piece there. And then we're not done yet, so we said, okay, well, let's come back up north. So we come back up north to Louisville and to the Muhammad Ali Museum. And so it's an all-encompassing tour, retracing the steps of the civil rights heroes and sheroes of the day. And so by taking 50 people or so, one bus, but we also make sure that we try to provide scholarships for at least 12 to 15 young people who would not have the wherewithal to be able to go, and also give them a stipend for each day. So, but we do that through donations and begging for money to be able to do that. But so by doing that, what I'm saying is that, when we think about tourism in Ohio, we have such amazing places here just within Ohio, and it makes all the difference when you go to the location where things happen at, because you can really feel what happened then. You can really have a better idea. It's not like reading a book or seeing it on TV. When you can go to a place, and we have a lot of those places here in Central in Ohio, that can really give you that feeling, and you learn so much more by being there. Like Selma, if you've ever gone to Selma, it's like going back in time. It truly is.
Yeah, I challenge anyone to go to Rankin House and
Yeah.
look over that river and not feel something, you know, that's like the
Yeah.
deep connection.
Oh, just to
place.
realize how people had to, you know, you might not have shoes on, right? And going through everything that you had to go through just to get to the Ohio River,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Can we talk about the history connection in the context of, if you're staying in the state, it's not just the building there off 71.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. Though it's a very exceptional example of brutalist architecture. Please come visit. Yeah, we have a network of 58 sites that are a part of our system all over the state, and we operate many of those with management partners. And actually, we're really kind of verging on 59, because Poindexter Village, which is, and I see my friends here from JPPF, the James Preston Poindexter Foundation, will be opening hopefully in the not too distant future. But we have everything from natural history to the Neil Armstrong Air and Space Museum in Wapakoneta, Fort Meigs. So we have a broad variety of sites, and we see each of those locations as an opportunity to anchor visitation and impact, but it's also connected to the broader community and other cultural institutions. Like how is each of these places a part of a network of heritage tourism and culture? And
you know, as we come out of, I hesitate to even phrase it this way, but as we come out of the pandemic, because we're coming out.
Breaking
now,
news.
we all have the opportunity to go places. And so can you talk about that economic impact? Because I'm sure, you know, for both of you, there was a little bit of a slow period there, but now?
Yeah, and I think from what we hear from professionals in the tourism business and in travel and the CVBs is that, you know, it's really coming back this year, and that there, you know, was over 201 million visitors we welcomed to Ohio. And, you know, one of the things we talk about and we think about is that when there is this web of things to do, or when we're talking about World Heritage, is that when people move from being a day visitor, which we have a lot of day visitors, to being an overnight visitor, they spend 3 times as much money. And that's one of the things that, you know, that we think about with our partners is how do we encourage a trip that does many things. And we imagine that we'll see a lot of Ohioans to begin with, like with World Heritage, and we see that at a lot of our sites, but how do we encourage more of even that in-state travel and overnight stays and discovery and appreciation and a love of our own history?
You know, one thing also that about our tour is that we didn't get people coming from Columbus, right? We got people actually sign up from as far away as California to fly in to be a part of the tour. So what an opportunity, so we have a captive audience and we can continue to talk about, you know, not just our tour, but Ohio, right? Where you've come to start the tour. So we've had several people come from out of state to Ohio, and hopefully then we'll capitalize with our connection with the history connection to keep them here in Ohio.
Can either of you share with us some aha moments from people who have come through one of the sites or on the tour about Ohio and what's here?
Well, I can start. So, and I don't think it's not necessarily about Ohio, but it's about a young person. So we had a young person that was out of South High School, and were able to provide a scholarship for him to go and a chaperone to be able to go. And so throughout the tour, we went to a lot of these sites. And so midway through the tour, we have a night that we have a talent show night, but we also have a round table. And the round table is to be able to debrief on what you've all seen and heard and this, that, and the other. And so we all gathered around. There was probably about 35 people or so in the room in around a circle, and we were all going around talking about, you know, what the impact was. Well, this young person started to talk, and he had stated, he says, you know, he started to talk about his past. He says, you know, he had tough childhoods, and you know, things weren't the best, and this, that, and the other. But he was still in school and trying to do his best there. He said, but here's one thing that this tour has done for me. He says, this is the only time that I've been able to speak and be heard. And so that really set us back in our seats to the weight of that, that this is an opportunity that our young people are feeling as though they have a space that they can have a conversation and then be connected with folk that are older, more mature, because we did that purposely also, was that they have someone to connect with and learn from. So it's great to have a captive audience for 6 days, but the thing is, you really learn a lot, and it really brings people, that's what they remember from the tour. And we have some young people that have been involved in the Martin Luther King oratorical contest and all that type of stuff. So, but that's what I remember, is that the impact of the locations that make the difference in the lives of young people and older people alike.
I know we've had a lot of experiences working with students, and some of my colleagues, this has been several years ago, did a project on the Near East Side where they were doing history of some of the historic buildings. And in the evaluations, the students were saying things like, oh, I understand why these old places that I just thought were old and falling apart were important. And I think that that's always, that realization that, this is a part of our authentic past and that it's worth saving. And there's just so many times where someone's like, oh, that happened like right here. When you can stand in the space. And, one I remember for myself that isn't our organization, but I was at the Air Force Museum, and there's the plane where Johnson was sworn in, as president, and you can stand in that spot. And you just have it happened right here. And I think that that's always the thing I carry with me, is really being able to show people you can come stand in that spot and feel it. At least for me, I'm always crying and getting goosebumps about history. I realize I'm not quite a normal person, but I think that's.
I cry too. Yeah, I cry.
Just giving more of those opportunities, and even for ourselves, that sometimes we talk about archaeological sites, that they're all over the place, and I think sometimes people are surprised, there's an archaeological site here that this stuff didn't happen some far away, far-flung place. This is all, within our reach.
Well, I'd like to add one thing also. One thing that I continue to hear is we didn't learn about this in school.
Yeah.
We didn't learn about this in school. And so that's when you're seeing the light bulbs. They're like, oh my gosh, really? That really? Mm-hmm. When we talk about civil rights, the only thing that they know going in is Martin Luther King, and the speech, I Have a Dream speech. But when they see the full game and all the people that played a part in this, both white and black and everybody who was a part of all of this, that truly made a difference, they're like, my gosh, I did not know that, mm-hmm. right? Did not learn that in school. That is not the history that I have learned. And so that's another aha moment. Now you're getting, so there's then the spark to learn more about true history that truly happened.
Mm-hmm. What is the opportunity, and where is your space respectively in building on opportunities for places that could be historical or that are here in our state?
One of the things that we like to talk about, and I hope we talk about more, is in preserving historic buildings and historic downtowns, the small main streets. I love when I drive around Ohio to go visit our sites or our partners, and you just see a real authentic place that has been saved and preserved. And there's a program where there are historic preservation tax credits, where it's a tax credit both federal and from the state that allows developers to preserve historic buildings according to the highest standards. I see some folks from Columbus Landmarks here as well. And that is a program that not only maybe creates the opportunity for tourism to an area and economic development, it also creates jobs and investment, and then it also pays itself back. So when we preserve the authentic places, like a place like Hamilton, Ohio, or I think about all the work that's been happening in Newark, it creates better places to want to go visit, again, in our backyard. And so that investment that goes into economic development and drawing in businesses, it also plays into heritage tourism and the attractiveness of places to visit.
Can you talk more about what's happening in Hamilton?
Yeah, Hamilton had a whole series of historic tax credit projects that revitalized parts of the town and brought more businesses coming in, and it just really I think hotels, it just really transformed from where, you're also familiar with driving through a sleepy town where you said this used to be great. Well, now it's great again. And so you really see over the course of like 20 years, a big change.
I tell you, my wife and I are talking about now, actually, how can we, really highlight those historic locations in Ohio to do some shorter tours, right? Because, every place has its story. And so whether big or small, it has a story. And so imagine, being able to take a tour, maybe it's 1 or 2 days, but to hit these different locations and to be able to hear their story and to then appreciate their story and how that came about. And so often, we do look at some old buildings in this area and we're like, well, it's going down, but it has a story. And if we're going to learn from that, we need to preserve that and preserve that story. And so we're hoping that we'll continue doing the longer tour, but what can we do, though, around Ohio to really highlight the gems that we have and those history markers that we have here in Central Ohio, and hopefully bringing more people to really be able to feel that and be a part of that.
Before I forget, I wanted to have you, Megan, talk about that World Heritage, the status. Are there other places that you can give us an example of? They already have it, we're trying to get it.
Yeah, so in the United States, there are 24. You see, I phoned a friend over here. There's only 24 World Heritage Sites. Most recently, there was a collection of Frank Lloyd Wright buildings that were put on the list, and before that, the San Antonio Missions. You may have heard of a little place called the Alamo, and also like the Grand Canyon. And then around the world, if you travel outside the country, the Colosseum, Stonehenge. And what I want to say about Stonehenge is that if you go to Newark Earthworks in the Octagon, there's a little circle on the side, and Stonehenge can fit in that little tiny circle. So, it's like what we have is even bigger. So, it's this highest designation of universal human value, and it just, the outstanding universal value. Yeah, there we go. But, it's this expression of human genius. And if you're not familiar with the Octagon in Newark, there's an 18.6-year cycle of the moon, which I am not going to explain right now. But there's a time in that cycle where the moon rises and sets at the northernmost and southernmost point. And 2 points in that octagon are, align with that perfectly. So it just shows the genius of the culture, whose remains that we live among.
And then do we vote on this next year, or do you have some special designation?
There's a committee of Unesco that votes on it, and they'll vote next summer. So we submitted our application, which is really like a very long and technical book that we submitted, and our application was accepted, and they'll be voting on it next June, probably.
And you already explained that Stonehenge could fit into the space here, so I'm going to throw some more shade. Who's our competition?
I don't know that it's a zero-sum, that there's only so many votes. So I don't know if we're not necessarily up against, they can add as many as they want.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're still the best, but no other World Heritage Sites in Ohio. And the closest ones are Cahokia Mounds and some of the Frank Lloyd Wright sites. So we'll have really a draw internationally here.
That's great. Let's talk about education, because you both kind of touched on that. We talked about the economic impact. Where in the space can we help our kids learn more and not say, oh, I didn't learn that. Do we need a longer school year? I know the kids are booing that, but you know what I mean.
Well, in regards to civil rights, I think, because I've been involved in a lot with on the Governor's Commission for the Ohio Martin Luther King celebration, and we have an oratorical contest every year in which young people are involved in that, and they actually give their orations about a particular topic that is chosen at the beginning of the year. And so from that, they have to do some research and to educate themselves on what they're going to talk about. But then they memorize, for the most part, their orations about this particular topic. And so there's a piece where we're continuing to push the envelope on not just, hearing or seeing what you read in the books and this, that, and the other, but to really dig deep into whether it be the internet, whether it be books, whether it be family, to come up with an oration that is powerful and impactful for the audience. So that part of it is a big education piece, and then we're also trying to build a resource area of our website to be able to provide more education, more educational tidbits for young people. But the bus, we call it's the Freedom Riders on the bus, but we call it, it's an educational bus. It's an educational piece on wheels for 6 days.
And it's for kids of all ages, I'm saying.
Kids of all ages. So we've had from about, I think, 9 years old, 10, about 13, okay, 10, 13, they're all kind of in that range, from 13 years on up. So we've actually had a range from 13 to about 85 years of age. There was a more mature person that had a scooter, and we worked that out. So we want everybody to have an opportunity, no matter what your ability, to be able to go through. But 13 is about the age because of some of the sites that you see and go into and some of the conversations. So 13 is about a good age to start.
We have worked with schools a lot, and I think the tricky part of working with schools is that every district is different, every teacher is different, every school is different, and there's a lot of challenges that teachers are dealing with right now. So the traditional field trip, we're not seeing as many of those. I don't think they'll ever go away, but one of the realities for us as a public institution that's inviting people in is like, how do we fill the gap with families or after-school programs? How are we there, maybe outside of, in addition to the school day, as being able to still go and visit? We do a lot of virtual stuff, but there's no replacement to the real thing. And so I just encourage anybody who's on the funding side of things, on PTOs, what you work with is just thinking about how you give students the opportunities. I fell in love with museums on a school field trip. And it might not be that, I want to make everybody a museum professional, but, you might fall in love with engineering on a field trip, or you might fall in love with something else. And I think there's so much pressure in the school environment. It's like, how as a community do we give those opportunities? And that investing in arts and culture, sometimes when you're looking at the whole array of things, it may seem like a nice to have, but there's a lot about it that can be really essential or help with things that are essential in our world.
And we talk about the economic impact. There has to be a little piece of that there.
Right, yeah, that there's there's so many jobs in Ohio that are tied to heritage tourism, and that's a piece of it too, that it isn't in addition to, it's many people's well-being, and that the other businesses that, see the impact of that as well. So, for us just to talk more openly about, in addition to the great and fun experiences that we have, that we are part of the whole environment.
Do you feel like it's been your experience that we are talking about it more openly these days? I don't know if that's a function of being shut down for a while.
Yeah, it might be, because there was a lot of conversation about what's the impact of the shutdown during COVID, and how hard it was for lots of nonprofits to survive, how much we were on the edge of survival, and what do we learn from that. But I also think there's just something, especially Midwestern, where we're like, well, I don't want to brag too much, that it's that we just need to be better about bragging about what we do, about our history, and that, when people are coming to work at Intel, or they're coming to go to on your tour, that we're bragging on ourselves.
Does it present an opportunity for some partnerships that perhaps weren't there before?
Yeah, I think there's so many partnerships.
Oh, yeah.
And
well, I think so, definitely on the tour. Like when I talked about, changing the tour, making it more Ohio-oriented, there's a lot more partners that can happen. Also, when we talk about locations, so it's not just those museums, but, what about, in an area of aviation and sports, right? And doing some of the tours that are along those lines. I'm getting my private pilot's license. One day I'll finally finish this thing, but I love aviation, right?
And then you can fly your tour.
Then I can fly the tour, all aboard my little Cessna.
That's great. So, do you have favorite can I ask you if you have favorite locations? I'm going to ask you because I have to have the mic. Do you have a favorite location or two in our state? Or that's one of your sites?
Yeah, I mean, they're all my favorite.
They're all your favorites.
Good answer, good answer.
And I love them all equally. But I will say, so I personally love when like the nature and the history come together, and hiking. And we work a lot with ODNR. I love Hocking Hills, that we have such beauty in our state. And we have a site called Fort Hill, which you may not know. It has a hilltop enclosure, a mound, and so you can hike and you can get the history. So those kinds of experiences. But then I also want to go to the coffee shop and I want to buy something from the local business. You know, that's the beauty of hitting up these locales.
Yeah, you know, in Ohio, I do have to think about the Ripley, Ohio, with the Rankin House, and it's just, you know, you can just visualize. And so in Ohio, that is definitely one of the my favorites in Ohio. Although I did, you know, like the Underground Freedom Center, Underground Railroad Freedom Center in Cincinnati, because it had you learned from slavery to civil rights.
Yeah, that's
so it was the full gamut. And you could see across the river. But when you're over there at the Rankin House, you're literally looking and where they had to go up these steps all the way up. I mean, so it's just amazing.
So I'm going to ask this question. I've already talked to Megan. I think she's probably going to call me a stalker soon. But I want you to talk about being the first female CEO at the History Connection.
Thank you. I'm really honored, and I think some people are surprised. And I was telling this story at the table, but I'll share. My daughter is 6, and she said to me a couple weeks ago, "Mommy, are you the first girl?" She says "ghoul" instead of girl, to have your job. And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "And was Bert, who's my predecessor and former boss, was Bert the first boy?" And I said, "No, he was the 12th boy." And she was like, "Wow," and so I'm, so honored to be kind of carving that path and hopefully put a hand down to help, bring others along with me. But I've been interested in women's history, and that's one of the ways I got really excited about history too, is looking at the past through the lens of women. So it means a lot to me.
Well, I think we all are pretty excited that Megan is there.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Napoleon, what you all don't know is he's been asking me, what are you going to ask me, as if I had a big test book or an AP exam or something.
You're bringing out the test
now
book
I'm bringing
right
out the
now.
test book. Actually,
I didn't like history.
You think you're sweating now.
Right.
But we are going to open it to your questions, because I think that might be even more interesting.
Okay.
So we have these questions from our live stream and in-person audience members, and so there's an order here at CMC. So you can type your questions into the chat, but you can also line up. I think that's Mantra. Mantra's there, and you're going to be taking the questions.
I'll be taking online questions. All right, so the first online question that I have is from Nancy Nanny. Does your heritage tourism organization have concerns about the current issue in some states regarding book banning and limiting what is taught about history?
Well, that's for me. Okay. Actually, no, we don't have a concern with that, because we are, first, we're all within the bus, right? So as we go to different locations, we are doing our educational pieces and our conversations on the bus. Now, though, it could spark a good conversation, though, right? To help understand, the book burnings and this, that, and the other things that have happened in American history. So it's a good topic to be able to address as we do others that are topical within the time that we are on the tour, because those conversations come up and we help bring understanding to that. So it's not a concern of kind of what's going on. Now if there was some violence in a way that of a place that we're going, we would have to address that and maybe change direction and be flexible there. But other than that, we consider all these things that are happening within our country and around the world are great topics to be able to have a conversation on the bus.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Julie Moich. I'm a historian and professor at Denison University in Granville. For the last few years, I've heard social justice advocates and activists talk about how they read a lot of history that is written by scholars in order to inform their activism. And so I was wondering if, in the heritage tourism scene, if there are gaps in what is available for you that you would like historians to fill. What sort of new research or new questions or new avenues in history do we need to be working on in order to help you achieve your goals? Thank you.
I know from our perspective, there's a disappearing landscape of places related to African American history from the historic preservation perspective as well. How can we be recognizing those spaces and saving them and talking about that history? I think anything that adds more stories to the rich tapestry that we need to be uncovering more. You were saying that every place has its story. So how do we just continue to uncover those? It's hard to give one slice because there's still, I think to recognize there's still so much we don't know. And I think maybe that's the misnomer, is that we have the book, we wrote it, and now we know everything. But we're always continuing to learn.
And I think I would answer that to I'd almost say like rewrite some of the books, right? Because of the lack of inclusion within those books. And you think about who wrote the books. And so I would say really look at the books and rewrite and or update those books is what's truly needed, because when we talk about fully embracing American history, we have the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? So rewrite the books.
And make them not boring. Because it's not boring.
Hello, my name is Tina O'Grady, and I recently, this past spring, went on the Heritage Tour down south, Civil Rights Tour. And my question is for you, Napoleon. I thought it was exceptional. Being at those locations, you can't help but to be immersed in some of those experiences, some of those feelings. And so my thoughts are, and I love the idea that you're going to do it maybe short tours right here in Ohio, because the same thing happens here, and we have a lot of African-American history here and civil rights issues here. But I think that when I was on it, I couldn't help but to think that this is a type of tour. I was somebody who taught cultural competence at state public safety, but this is the kind of a tour that I think corporate, government, and community leaders should be on in trying to make any changes or have any serious impact on some things. So my question is are you going in that direction where you can have corporate America get on these buses? I recently saw that the NCAA took some people down on the same type of tour to have those experiences, their administrators. So I would like to see it be a bigger opportunity and professionalized in a way that education for leadership in our communities.
I totally agree. And if there's, we want to be able to focus maybe a tour or two tours, and if we have to shorten them up to do that, we would love to be able to have that, because I'm also a director of DEI, and so to really take the leadership and get them involved and have them have a true understanding is something that will truly make the difference going throughout the corporation or whatever it is. So, so for those who are in here, if you would like to get your corporation together or take the leaders of your team, we would really welcome that to be able to do something like that. And if it's something specifically for a group that you have, please let us know, because it's very important to be able to educate those who have such an impact of an overall organization.
Okay. This question is from Marla Jones. And her question is the panel and audience aware that there are Underground Railroad signs going up on High Street and State Route 23 towards Lake Erie? Do you think this is going to be marketed to the public?
I have seen some of those markers. There's a variety of marker programs that exist And I think those kinds of things, we run the Ohio Historical Markers Program, so I'm pro-marker. I don't know that there's an anti-marker movement, maybe there is. But I think that it is helpful to talk about when there isn't, sometimes there's not the remnant of anything above ground that we can see. A marker can help, orient you in space and time. But hopefully that there's more shared about that. I'm not sure.
Hi, I'm David Weaver. I'm the director of the Ohio Library, one of the partner organizations of Ohio History. And just speaking of which, markers and everything, just a year ago last week, we dedicated the Toni Morrison historical marker up in her native Lorraine. And we worked together 2 years ago to create the Ohio Literary Trail. And I don't think a lot of people know how many literary figures came from Ohio that are also historic figures, like Paul Laurence Dunbar and Harriet Beecher Stowe. And so I was just wondering and everything, and now I'm on the Todd Kleisman up there, the America 250 Ohio, one of the committees for that. As we look forward to the 250th anniversary of America's birth, do you see that cultural and literary and history tourism will become more important as we lead up to that important anniversary?
I certainly hope so, and I think I just want to shout out the book festival too, and as far as bragging on Ohioans, that Ohioana does a great job of that. It is artists, it's people from all walks of life that are a part of history and getting people excited and immersed in the literature, in the music, in the visual arts, in industry, in flight. There's just so many dimensions that it could take, and just as you open that up, it gets more exciting, I think, and more accessible to more people.
Good afternoon. My name is Wendell Tober. I work for the city. I'll leave it at that. I am actually a Columbus Police CLO, Community Liaison Officer for 9th Precinct. I've been on the department approximately 25 years now. I had the pleasure of knowing Napoleon most of my life. Kind of grew up together, hung out together, and did some very fun things together. With that being said, I'm very proud of him and his wife for what they do, Heritage Tours and so forth, but I have more of a suggestion than a question. We at Columbus Police, we've done tours of the Holocaust Museum in D.C. We've taken a bus of us, and it's voluntary, and we usually fill up the bus. We've done it for the past pre-pandemic 3 to 4 years. Very enlightening tour. For the most part, everybody pretty much comes back a changed person from learning from the history. And also, too, we went over to the African American Museum that was incorporated a year or two later. With that being said, I think your tour would be something beneficial to division and obviously to private entities as well. But I think it would definitely enlighten a lot of officers on and off duty as well as retirees too, to what you do and so forth. I'm born and raised here in Ohio, love Ohio, and then what we have to offer. I'm 58 years old. I feel like I got a few years left to learn more about Ohio and anxious to do so. We ride motorcycles, and I think that's a good opportunity and a good way too to visit our state and enjoy some of the things that it has to offer.
Yeah. Thanks, Wendell. No, you make a good point. Yeah, because we do ride motorcycles, and we like to take the winding roads and really to explore Ohio. Sometimes we just go, and we don't know where we're going, but we just go. Yeah, this is definitely something that involving law enforcement and some of these tours, or some maybe even shorter tours. But again, when you have a captive audience, and to be able to really just start the conversation, because that's what's needed so greatly, especially today, especially within law enforcement, is to be able to start the conversation. And what a conversation starter is to be on a bus and going to these historical locations and learning about history, but also having that conversation about really seeing the actuality, the trueness of history, but to be able to really face that and have a conversation on it.
All right, this question is for Megan. What is your vision for the Ohio History Connection?
Thank you for that. Well, I see that we have this opportunity to be much more visible and vibrant, not just necessarily for us to grow as an organization, but to support Ohio and Ohioans. And that our opportunity is really to improve every community that we touch. And that might be a physical place, a community, or it could be people who are in community together as we are today. And I think we can do that by bringing people together to be together in conversation. We can do that by cultivating pride, pride in place, being excited to be from here and from Ohio, and also through economic development. And I think that that's where, I'll be working with our team to continue to push and grow.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tony Bell. I am the proud spouse of Napoleon. My question is for both of you. As I look through this wonderful audience, I see that we are somewhat seasoned in life. We're at least 18 years or older here. How would you encourage both organizations working together more deliberately and using that model of young and seasoned alike to make history more exciting and come to life a bit more?
Yeah, I think partnership is a great way to do that, and creating just intentional opportunities for intergenerational groups to come together. But we also have to tell relevant stories. I think that's part of it as well, is that it's got to be interesting. We need to do a better job of being responsive and connecting to today. And, we opened an exhibit, it's been 10 years ago, about the 1950s. And one of the things we wanted is for people to have conversation across generations, so that we didn't have a lot of didactic information, but people could talk across groups and across generations, and that takes a lot of work and intentionality, but I think it's a really worthwhile endeavor.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, because we often say, wow, you know what, we're going through the same thing we went through 50 years ago, and so that's how I think we bring the young people on board. Is that, to your point, is that we show that what's happening now and what you're facing now has happened in the past. And what aren't we doing, or what should we do to prevent that from repeating itself again to your kids? And so I think that's where a lot of young people have to understand, well, how does this impact me, right? If it doesn't, they're kind of out there, this, that, but how does this impact me? And if we can show that, and through partnerships and other partnerships, to be able to show that and then bring those conversations together, I think we'll be doing exactly what you said, is to be able to morph the young and the seasoned together to learn from each other and really, I think, solve some of these problems that we're having.
Tony, we appreciate you calling us young and seasoned. We're going to turn things back over to Carrie Schmidt right now for concluding remarks.
All right, thank you so much. I hope you found today's forum as interesting and inspiring as I did. And if you're anything like me, your weekend to-do list just got a lot longer, so there's much to see. Thanks for sharing that with us. Thank you for today's partner, WBNS-TV. Thank you to our online virtual seat patrons and to the Emergency Response Fund of the Columbus Foundation for presenting our live stream in partnership with the Columbus Dispatch. And our special appreciation for today's speakers, Napoleon Bell, Megan Wood, and to Tracy Townsend. Please make plans to join us next Wednesday for Courts Under Attack, the next forum in the Democracy in Crisis series. And thank you all for joining us. We couldn't have conversation without you being here, so thank you very much. We'll look forward to seeing you next week.